Bush held back-to-back meetings with Arab leaders to promote the U.S. as an honest broker. He pressed the Saudis on oil, the Palestinians on peace. His speech made subtle demands for reforms in Arab countries. Bush's relentless optimism of a deal between Israel and the Palestinians by the end of his term is a disconnect from reality. Negotiators here can't agree on removing checkpoints, let alone imply progress with core issues like borders or security that have stumped peacemaking by departing presidents before. Janice Mackey-Ferrer, CTV News, Jerusalem.
High-level talks about another Mideast conflict hit a roadblock today. Lebanese factions meeting to end an 18-month political crisis and growing violence traded accusations at their talks. Frustrated and angry Lebanese leaders stormed out of the meetings. The country's ruling coalition insists that rival Hezbollah factions surrender their weapons. A government crackdown on the Syrian-backed opposition group sparked widespread clashes last week. 67 people were killed and more than 200 were wounded in the worst internal violence since the Lebanese civil war some 20 years ago. Hezbollah is demanding a greater say, even a veto, within Lebanon's cabinet. The standoff has left Lebanon without a president since November. And with more on developments in the Middle East and specifically about Bush's visit, we're joined by Marc Gopin, professor of religion, diplomacy and conflict resolution at George Mason University. Professor, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Scott.
How realistic is it for anyone to have the idea that there could be a deal by the end of this year?
It's not very realistic at all. In fact, the administration was privately or subtly talking about a shelf agreement in which they just wanted the sides to agree on what they might agree to later, which would be a real slap in the face to those who wanted an agreement sooner, especially the Palestinians.
Is there a chance that both sides are biding their time waiting for whoever is the next American president?
Well, I think there are a series of weaknesses on all sides in terms of the Olmert administration, in terms of Abbas, and there is a sense in which this American administration is not going to lean on the parties aggressively and engage in talks that are going to produce results, despite the rhetoric of President Bush in the Middle East and despite the fact that Secretary Rice has insisted on negotiations on substantive issues.
Now, 8 months before, roughly 8 months before another administration, what do both sides talk about or perhaps think about in that time?
Well, if they were realistic, what they would be doing right now is trying to negotiate some short-term confidence-building measures that could be evidence of continuity towards a new direction. Now, in fact, there are some positive signals in terms of the West Bank environment, in terms of release or decrease of certain checkpoints and increase of funding for good projects for Palestinian youth and other things. But it is it's highly doubtful that they can have an announcement of substantive agreements on borders or on issues of right of return before they vet a new American president.
Any outgoing president is concerned about legacy. What kind of legacy is George Bush going to have concerning the Middle East?
Well, I think it's possible that he could still try to demonstrate by word and by deed in the next few months that he's serious about a Palestinian-Israeli agreement. It's not enough to go to the Middle East with nothing new in hand. If he could at least announce some substantive changes on the ground, that would at least be some legacy that he had moved in the right direction. It's very late in the day, but it's possible that with enough determination, they could persuade both sides to offer some new positions on some final status issues.
On the short-term point of view, he was hoping, it seems, that his legacy concerning oil prices would be that he could convince the Saudis to somehow pump more oil and bring oil prices down. He didn't come away with much, did he?
No, he didn't. He's lost a lot of credibility because of the fiasco in Iraq. And in fact, their hopes had been placed in terms of Lebanese democracy, which has also been called into question. And every place that they were neglectful due to military options as opposed to diplomatic ones, they're suffering the consequences now at the end of the American administration.
From George Mason University, Marc Gopin, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.